Okay, hi everyone. This is just going to be a very quick tutorial, mainly to explain how to use blocks properly and build the wall modules after seeing many of you get a bit tangled up with this last session. So I'll start completely from scratch. This is just a new empty Rhino file. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to import a drawing which I've made as a picture. Just plonk it down there. Now, this is a little bit more accurate than the hand-drawn one, but don't stress if you use the other one to dimension your walls. The dimensions are almost the same overall. The sill height is a little higher in this one than the other one, but it really won't affect you too much. But use this one if you haven't drawn your wall modules already. So let's just resize it. So scale, and just roughly select it. I want to go from here, whoops, here to here, and I know that's 2710, 2710, because that's what it's dimensioned at. Okay, so there it is, about the right size. One thing to notice, with your grid, you might find your actual working grid is tiny and it's sort of in millimeters. What you can actually do is go under File, Settings, Grid. I want minor grid lines every 100 millimeters, major grid lines every 10 minor grid lines, which is 1 meter, and I probably only need about 100 of them. So what that now means is that each of these big squares is 1 meter and each of these small squares is 100 millimeters. It just sort of helps give things a bit of scale. So other things to do, just to set up ready to go. Let's ditch all of these layers. We just don't need them. I'm going to create a construction layer. This is just something I always do, and I always make my construction layer blue so that I know anything that's in blue is something I'm working on. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to construct a layer for my walls, and then under that layer I'm going to create 2 sublayers, one for symbolic walls, which will be just like a block, so that when I can just do like a sort of a schematic wall, and the other for the actual stuff with all the details in it. So, and I'll call that complex. And that will do for now. So let's start by drawing our symbolic wall. Now I'm going to make my block go from the slab all the way up to the top of this, and the same width. So it's actually not going to just be the timber, it's going to be the whole thing, which means that I can position it on the slab exactly. So now I want to draw my symbolic block in the symbolic layer. This is important to get things in the right layers, so that it works for you later on. So make sure you're in the symbolic layer, box, and I'm going to start at 0, 0, 0, which is home, and I'm going to make it 2710 long by 90, 27 long by 90 wide by, what's that, 2650 plus 100 high. So 2650 plus 100 is 2750. Whoops, and I want to be in, I'm going to go shaded mode. All right, now, being as this is symbolic, I want it to be transparent, so I'm going to make my symbolic, give my symbolic layer red color, and I'm going to dial the transparency down to, I don't know, about there. And that makes my wall block transparent, so I can see what's going on. So now I'm going to label it text. Let's see, let's make that 50 millimeters high. I don't like this font, so I'm going to make it a different font. Where's the font that I want? Century Gothic. And I'm going to say outer wall module. Oh, that's a bit big. All right, so we'll put it there, and let's make it smaller. One. That's a bit too small. 1.5. That's better. Okay, so all right. Now I don't want it to be transparent, so I'm going to manually change it so that it's not using the layer color. It's just going to be black. Whoops. Not transparent. Apply. Now I'm going to use my gumball to rotate it, and I'm going to move it so that it's about there. Whoops. Move. I want it on the corner. There we go. And then I can just move it down a bit and across a bit. So those two things, those two objects, the block, the box and the text, are both in the symbolic layer. Now I'm going to make it into a block. But before I do that, I'm going to shift to the walls layer. So I'm going to make walls my active layer, and that's where the blocks are going to be. So when you create a block, it goes into whatever layer you have selected at the time, and I want them in walls. So I'm going to select both of those things, type block, and I'm going to set the base point in the middle of that side, and I'm going to call it outer wall module. And now it's a block. The original bits and pieces are still there, I think, are they? No, maybe not. So now we want to, I can now copy that block around the place, do whatever I want with it. Let's see, let's rotate it and move it to there, and then let's make another copy of it there. So that's a bit like having a three, well, you probably wouldn't have that. That would be an inner wall module, but there it is, 3 wall modules. Now we want to draw the more complex structure. So let's put in all of these bits. So let's just move it back to the origin, just because I like to be neat. Now, we probably want some sub-layers under here for the timber, for the steel bits, and later we might add one for the cladding. So let's go new sub-layer timber, and another new sub-layer steel. And we'll just leave it at that for now, because that's all we're going to work with. Let's switch to the timber layer. Now, we're going to use our block here as a guide to allow us to quickly draw these members how we want them. So all of these members, as noted here, are all 90 by 40 Australian hardwood, except for the sill and these two cross braces. So let's just start by drawing all the 90 by 40s. So you can see that the bottom plate of the wall goes the full width, and these uprights called studs sit on top of the bottom plate, and then there's a top plate that sits on top of the studs, and this is to give you the best structural setup. It means loads go down through these, and they don't there's no chance of things breaking at these corners. So we're in the timber layer, so let's go box, and let's go from there to there, and we know it's 90 in that direction. Hang on, is that right? That doesn't, sorry, not 90, 40. Box, ding, ding, 40 in that direction. Oh, wait a minute. No, we want to do top and bottom first. My mistake. Box. That one, top and bottom, super easy. We can just go 40. Let's copy that vertical straight up to the top. Now let's add some more. I could rotate those, but I'll just draw some new ones, and I'll go box 40. That's the full height, and then I'm going to copy that over to here. Now let's see. There's another one. They're at 850 spacings. So what I want to do is I want to go select my extrusion, and I want to copy it across 850 plus 40. So copy, well, which is 890. Whoops, we have to get it in the right spot. And then there's another one that's 890 from, oops, no, it's just now. See, that's not the right spot. Let's try that again. Extrusion, copy from there. One thing, if you haven't already discovered it, the tab key locks your the line at which you're dragging things along. So if you sort of drag to a particular point and you want to stay on that line, like let's say we want to reference off this near line, I press tab, and now no matter where I move the cursor, it stays on that line. So we want to go 890 along there, and there we go. Does that look right? The other one, I could just copy this again, another 890, but let's just, for something different, mirror it. Let's mirror copy from the middle of that to the other side. And then let's just check our measurement with a distance. And that should be 850, which it is. And that should be 850, which it is. Right, so there's our uprights. Now, let's put in these two horizontals. So we have 765, again, plus 40. So let's copy that up. I'm going to use the gumball this time. To make a duplicate, you hold down the Alt key and click the arrow, and we want to go, what did I say? 765 plus 40 is 805, 805. Whoops. Don't. 805. And then there's one that is down 490 from the top. So again, hold down Alt, click that, and this time we want to go down, so we put minus 490 plus 40 is 530. And there's that. So we also have a sill there. Now, you'll see that these pieces, you can't, in real life, you can't have two pieces that just magically pass through each other. And if you look at the drawing, you can see that these horizontals in these two middle bits are the ones that go all the way through. And these, the vertical is actually cut by that horizontal, but it's also cut by the sill. So let's draw the sill next before we actually deal with that. Now the sill is 155 by 33. So let's cheat and we'll start with that and we'll copy it vertical. And then we'll make it scale 1D 33. So we'll make it the right height, and then it was, what was it? 155. So scale 1D, which means scale in one dimension from there, 155. Now it's centered on this, and we now have it sticking out one side, so we just want to move it from, I've got my midpoint snap on from the midpoint of that, and here's where the tab key comes in handy. So I want to stay on that near line. I'm going to press tab to lock it in place, and then I can center on the piece that's below it. So now it's in the right spot. So now we can trim a few things up. So you can see that these verticals take precedence. So we will trim those by going, well, I could either Boolean difference them to chop them with these outer bits, but I'm just going to scale them, scale 1D again from their midpoint to the edge. So I just bring them in. So, and now we will have to use a Boolean difference. I'm going to select my extrusion, my other extrusion, Boolean difference with both of those, whoop, not you, both of those pieces. Okay, and so now it's chopped my vertical bits in two. So let's have a look and see what's going on up here. The vertical bits go through. So we take this piece, Boolean difference with poly surface and the poly surface. So now they're chopped right. So that all looks pretty good. Now, one thing is these sill bits, you'll need to adjust the length on them later on, but you'll see when you put the wall modules together how that has to be. For now, we'll just take a bite out of them with the ends, because we know the verticals pass through them like that. And we'll adjust the lengths of these later on. So now we have these diagonal bits. So they are, what are they? 32. 70 by 32. All right, so I think I'm just going to borrow one of these pieces, and I'm just going to Alt copy it up. Then I'm going to move it from the middle of that side to that junction point. And then I'm going to rotate in 3D, 3D. My axis of rotation is that edge. Oh, no, yes, it's, hang on, wait a minute. It's that edge, perpendicular, and I want to rotate from there up to that corner, and then I want to stretch it. So again, scale 1D from there to there. So I just did that from the midpoints. Now, it was, what was it? How thick? 32 thick. So let's just scale it. 32, half of 32 is 16, so scale 1D from, sorry, this is a little hard to see, from that point to the end, which is currently 20 because it's 40, and we want it 32, so we make it 16. And it is, how wide? It is 70 by 32. So we want to go from the midpoint, half of 70 is 35, so scale 1D, from the middle of it to the edge, 35. Okay, so it's now the right size, but it's still got those bits that hang, whoops. Actually, what I could do at this point is it could just turn off my symbolic just to make it easier so I don't keep running into it. Now, it's still got those bits that are kind of crashing into the extra structure, so we'll just Boolean difference them away with the other bits. So Boolean difference with you, 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 and you. And now, if I isolate, you'll see it's cut perfectly to fit. Unisolate. But what have I done? I've drawn it backwards. Luckily, I can just mirror it. Now, this is a handy thing to mirror in because it's exactly the same width, so I can just go select, mirror, midpoint, across. All right, so that's better, and then we'll use mirror again, but we'll use the middle of this, and we'll turn on copy, and we'll go there, there. So there's our structure. We can turn our symbolic stuff back on if we want. So, now, what have I done wrong? I said when I drew the block originally that I was going to add this extra 100, which I did, which means that these things are now 100 millimeters too low. So what we need to do is select all of this stuff, move it and these bits, and move it up 100. Now we need to trim off all of these bits we've made a mess of. So we'll use that to Boolean difference. Sorry, we want to chop these bits, Boolean difference with that, and then get rid of these bottom bits. And then these bits are going to be too long, so again we will Boolean difference with our sill, and then ditch the bits that are left. Okay, that's better. That's how it should be. And we can check because the inside of our window here should be very close to 1200. So distance from there, turn off my center snap. Center snap's a pain in the ass. Down to here should be 1202, which it is. Okay, so that wall is right now. So now what we have is we have our module and we have all of these loose bits, and we want the loose bits to become part of the module now. So what we're going to do is we're going to select our module, block edit, we're going to add object, and we're going to add all of those bits. Press enter, apply, and they're part of our module. And look what's happened. All our blocks over here have updated. How cool is that? So what else do we want to do? We want to add our little pieces down here. So to model those, already shown you this, but I'll show you again very quickly. Let's see, what have we got? How long did I make them? 140 plus 100 is 240, plus 40 thick is 280, and let's say we add another, I don't know, call it 40 to that, is 283, 20. So let's go polyline, 320, and then let's see, let's go across maybe, let's go 100, maybe 150. Yeah, that looks about right. All right. So now we want those little pieces have a little curve in them. So we're going to use the fillet command, fillet, which puts a little curve in. And I reckon maybe the radius is maybe 20 millimeters. Let's try that and see what happens. You select one line, then the other line, and then it puts a little curve in, which looks about right. Now, this steel reinforcing rod is 16 millimeter, so we're going to use a command called pipe. We select our rail, which is that, and we want to use diameter 16, flat cap, and we want it 16 at the end as well. Done. So there is our little piece of reinforcing. Now, we also have a piece of steel tubing that sits over the top of that, but let's just put it in place first. So we don't need the guide curve anymore. Let's rotate the whole thing vertically, and let's rotate it that way, because I think we want our pieces to be perpendicular to the wall. So now we need to put it in place. So its center is 80 off the end. So let's go zoom in, let's turn our center snap back on, move from the center. Let's put it in the middle of that wall there, and then let's go in 80, but it's the opposite direction to the arrow, so it's minus 80. And we want it to be, I said I'd make it stick up 40, so we need to move it up 80, so it sticks through. So there's that. So now we want the piece of 100 millimeter long 32 mil diameter tubing. So let's do a cylinder. Actually, let's just turn off the symbolic bit. Let's go from the center of there. We want, again, diameter 32, 32, and we want it to be 100. Then we want to move that vertically from there to there. I could, technically this is a cylinder, is a hollow piece of tubing that this rod passes through. There are lots of ways we could do that. We could, if this was, say, a 3 millimeter wall thickness, I could create another cylinder that's 3 millimeters less in diameter. One way to do that would be to say, duplicate face border this circle, which has now given me a bit of line work that I can play with. I can offset that, and I want to offset it 3 millimeters to the inside. And I could extrude that, extrude curve up, and then select my original extrusion, Boolean difference, that one. And now, if I delete that, you'll see it's hollow. Another way to do it would have been to delete that completely, And just start with the circles and select both of them and extrude them 100 millimeters. And that gives us, again, a hollow surface. There's lots of ways to do everything. Move vertical. Let's just keep it like that. Let's do it like that. So then on the top, there is a steel washer and a nut. So steel washer, let's say that's, we'll make it the same as this. So again, let's duplicate edge, and we want that edge, and we'll copy that up, and then we'll extrude curve, and let's make the washer say 2 millimeters. Can delete the original curve. I can move it vertically from the bottom to there, and then I can Boolean difference with the rod, and now I have a washer. Now we want to model a nut. Now nuts are hexagonal, so we can use the polygon command. We can tell it we want 6 sides, and we want to, let's use, there's 2 modes, circumscribed and inscribed. So let's use inscribed, choose the center, and then, whoops, again, let's use our tab key to lock it in that plane, and then let's make it the same size. Well, let's make it about that. Now, nuts typically have a specific outside diameter, so that you can use a standard spanner or socket on them. For the sake of this exercise, I'm not going to bother making that. A 16 millimeter threaded rod will, take a certain size nut, and I can't think of what that is off the top of my head. So let's just now extrude curve. Let's make it say what looks right, maybe 10 millimeters. Whoops, that's 110. Let's delete the curve. Let's Boolean difference the rod, and now we have a nut. So we'll move that vertical from there to there. And there we have our little assembly. And just for the hell of it, I'm going to make that into a block, because why not? Oops, sorry. Select it again. First of all, almost made a mistake. It's in the timber layer. We want it in the steel layer. So let's change object layer. And just so that we can see clearly what's what, so that we don't make that mistake, let's change the timber. Let's give it a kind of browny, woody sort of color. That looks about right. So now we can tell steel is grey and timber is this sort of woody color, woody brown. So where were we? Let's make that a block. Block. Whoops. Block. Let's make the base point. Where do we want the base point? Doesn't really matter. Let's just put it at the center of that, and we'll call that, what do we call that? Base. Support. Not a particularly good name, but so let's see, 885, 775, 890 between centers. So let's go Alt, click on the arrow, minus 885, and Alt to copy, click on the arrow, whoop, select, Alt, click on the arrow, minus 775. And then there's another one that's 890, so click minus 890. And then just to check, the end of that should be 80 millimeters off the end of that. So let's go dim from there. I'm going to use my tab key again to lock it, and then I'm going to measure off the center of this, and look at that, it's 80 millimeters. So that all worked. Each one of those is a block. So if I were to edit that block, let's say I realized that there should have been, that nut should have been 12 millimeters tall. So I can scale 1D, make it 12 millimeters, 12, and watch, apply, and all my other nuts have now changed to 12 millimeters. The wonder of blocks again. So now these are not part of my wall block. So let's make them part of the wall block. So let's select our outer wall module, and again, block edit. Now we want to add object. We want to add you, 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 and you. Enter. And before I do that, I'll just shift so you can see what happens. Apply. Ah, and look, everything has the right bits. Now, typically, if this was an outside wall, say, all of these are now facing out, and you probably want them facing in. So you could either just rotate 180 degrees your module, but that rotates it around the object center point, which is not what we want. So we'll have to move it back into place. Move. Or the other thing we could have done is rotate them in our block, but this works just as well. So rotate 180, and then let's just put that back where it should be. Move. There, there. So there we go. Everything is in the right layers. I can turn off the whole wall. Whoops, I need to make that. I can turn off the whole wall. I can turn on and off my symbolic and complex bits. And within the complex bits, I can turn on and off whichever bits. Ah, now, you see what happened here? I've made a mistake. When I created the block for my little steel bits, I was still in the timber layer, which means that when I turn timber off, those blocks disappear. So to fix that, what we're going to have to do is edit our block, block instance, block edit. We're going to select our supports. We're going to remove, select objects to remove. You, hang on, what's going on? No, outer wall module. Whoops, cancel. We're going to remove, whoops, outer wall module. Remove object. I want to remove you, 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 you. Enter, apply, and you'll see they've disappeared from our blocks. We're going to delete that, delete, 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 delete. We're going to, well, I wonder if you can just move it. Can we move that block? Change object layer. Oh, that looks like it worked. Okay, so maybe we didn't need to do all of that stuff. Let's go, let's put them back. Let's select them all. Let's put them in the steel layer. Yep, okay, and now we can select our block. Block edit, add object, 1, 2, 3, 4, enter, apply, and now we should just be able to go, there we go, timber, steel, whole thing, symbolic with just that. So there you go. So hopefully I didn't confuse you too much about blocks. What we could do now is add our cladding. Now I can't be bothered drawing the cladding from scratch, so I'm going to go to my other model. And I'm going to grab the cladding profile, and I'm going to bring it in. There it is there. Now we want to rotate it that way. It sits just up under that sill, so let's move it vertically to the bottom of the sill, and then move it across like that to there, and then move it in to there. And then it looks like we're still might move it out just a tiny bit, 1 millimeter. There we go. So it's not clashing with anything, and then we'll scale 1D to make it the right length. Yoink. Now, I happen to know that this steel cladding comes in standard lengths, and one of the standard lengths it comes in is 2700. So we're actually going to resize this whole thing because we want to, wherever we can, just use standard lengths, and we'll make that 2700. But it's not quite in the middle now, so we'll move it from its midpoint to the midpoint of the wall. So you can see it's 5 mil in there and 5 mil in the other side. And I've got it on the wrong side. If this is the way my little feet are pointing, then this is the outside. So let's just mirror it using the top of that. We didn't want to copy it, so we'll delete that. So there is my outer wall module with cladding. Now I need to add the cladding to the module, to the block. So let's create a new sublayer, cladding. Let's move this into the cladding layer, change object layer, and now let's select our block, block edit, add object, add the cladding, enter, apply, and there it is. Easy as that. So I'm going to leave it at that for now, but hopefully that will get you going with your wall modules if you haven't already got there, in a way that makes them very easy to edit later on if you need to adjust things, or you find you've made a mistake. Hopefully by next week you'll all have all your walls looking good, and then I'll show you how to create another set of wall modules that use this module as part of them, but then have different combinations of windows. So until next week.